meeting to order and ask for roll call, please.
Sure. Chairman Bob?
Here.
Vice Chairman Dibble is absent. Commissioner Schrader?
Present.
Commissioner Zarguni?
Present.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner York?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez? Commissioner Mandel?
Here.
And Commissioner Salazar Garza?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 2 is public comment. Are there any other comments other than those related to agenda items?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andrew Demas, on behalf of Development Services, we have not received any comments on any items for the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Item 3, approval of absences, none. We will move on past that to approval of minutes. This is an approval for the regularly scheduled meeting of January 6th and the special meeting of January 11th. Do I have a motion or any comments on approval of minutes?
This is Commissioner Schrader. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
One second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the discussion and possible action of the Planning Commission annual report. It was a very fine report. Do I have any comments on that report, or is there a presentation for that, Andrew?
We do have it available in case there are any questions or comments.
Do any planning commissioners have any comments on the report?
Good job.
Not at this time.
Thank you. Do we need to make a open to public hearing, or is this just a motion to approve, Andrew, or how do we handle this?
I don't believe it's a public hearing since it's just a report that would find its way to council, but we do need a motion and a vote. Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. At this time, do I have a motion to approve the annual report for the Planning Commission?
This is Commissioner Miller, so moved.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. On to the consent public hearing agenda items under new plats. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Andrew Demas with Development Services. For the consent agenda item tonight, which is pretty short, we have, starting with item under new plats, item number 3, Turtle Cove Center, Unit 2, Block 1, Lot 7, R1, a replat of 5.22 acres. Item number 4, El Caballo subdivision, a final, which is outside of the city limits, that is 1.2 acres in size. And item number 5, La Costa Center, Unit 1, Block 1, Lot 17-A1, 17-A2, and 17-A3, a final of 1.35 acres. Both staff and the Technical Review Committee have reviewed the submitted plats and deemed them acceptable to both the requirements of the UDC as well as the Texas Local Government Code and recommend approval. If there are any, that concludes the consent agenda, and if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to go.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions regarding items 3, 4, and 5 on the new plats? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing for items 3, 4, and 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not received any public comments on the 3 submitted plats.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion for items 3, 4, and 5 on the new plats.
Michael York, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented by staff.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Mandel, I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the public hearing item B, the comprehensive plan.
Good evening. My name is Dan McGinn. I'm the director of the city's planning department. Also with me tonight is Avery Altmans with the planning department. And we have Matt Rufo with Asakura Robinson. He was a consultant that helped us out with this project. And he's going to be handling most of the presentation moving forward here. But just to kind of intro the item, this was an item or a corridor that I think this is probably one of the first discussions I had with the city manager, Peter Zanoni, when he first came on board. This was a a route that he took often when he first was starting with the city. So he, firsthand, kind of saw the activity that was kind of brewing out there, and a lot of the congestion issues that we're seeing. He was also concerned, at the time, I think we had a few accidents. This corridor doesn't have any pedestrian or bike facilities of note. And obviously, with the recent development in Sinton with the steel plant and all the tertiary kind of projects that probably are going to follow them, we envision this Cal Allen area to be kind of a spot where a lot of those folks may land as far as when they're choosing homes and development. So we wanted to get into this project, look at the corridor, and really be prepared for what we believe we're going to see some development in this area. So with that, he asked that we take a look and do a corridor study and kind of development and develop some recommendations on how to improve the area. And obviously this is a tech stop facility, so we do have to obviously work closely with them, and it is a project we did, and Matt will explain as he goes through it. But just wanted to kind of intro, and now I'll turn it over to Matt. He'll kind of go walk you through the document, the presentation rather. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening, commissioners. Can you all hear me okay? Dan,
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, sounds
sir,
great.
yeah.
Excellent. All right, good evening. My name is Matt Rufo. I'm a principal with Asakura Robinson, and as Dan mentioned, we were chosen and very appreciative of the opportunity to work with your great staff on developing a vision and set of goals and recommendations for achieving the vision and various goals through this corridor plan. And so through these slides, we'll look at the next slide and get a chance to take a look at the study area here. We're looking at Northwest Boulevard. This study area was defined for us at the very start of the project, about a 500-foot buffer within the 2.7-mile segment of Northwest Boulevard between County Road 73 and I-69. The next slide will show our timeline of events. Began with us going through the understanding phase in March and April of last year, in which we first met with an advisory committee of civic and business leaders from the area to really guide the direction of the project. We had a couple of public meetings during the process, a visioning public meeting in May, and a concept plan review meeting in July. These were both held via Zoom. We had really good attendance, about 60 to 70 folks on each call. We also administered an online survey, something we typically like to do in person. And again, with the meetings, we typically do in person, but given the recommendations of the Department of Health, limited our in-person activities and travel about the community. And so we had really good participation, though. We had several hundred folks take the survey. We came out of the survey with a number of different themes. Number one, top priority was reducing traffic congestion. 80% of folks strongly agreed with the statement that roads should be more convenient for auto traffic with less congestion. We also heard a lot of support for more dining and grocery shopping options. A lot of mentions for a particular grocery store, also support for family-friendly dining options. Next slide will show our number one write-in request was for increasing the beautification of the area through landscaping. As Dan mentioned earlier, the area operates sort of as a gateway, as being the first part of Corpus Christi entering from the west. The next one was an emphasis on improving pedestrian and cyclist safety. Over half of respondents to the survey strongly agreed that the area should be safer, more accessible for people walking and biking. Okay, we took the huge body of public input that we received and synthesized it into a comprehensive vision statement in which Northwest Boulevard is Cal Allen's main street, providing the amenities of a prosperous neighborhood center in a small, tight-knit community. The Boulevard's a welcoming, diverse, and family-friendly place where people go to shop, gather, invest in businesses, play, and raise a family. And this vision is supported by 4 main goals that in which we categorize a number of different recommendations. And without reading all of this text to you, this is all available in the final report. That's available on the project website, corridorscc.com. But just to summarize them, they are making the area safe, prosperous, healthy, and attractive and orderly. And the map on the following page shows these, on the following slide shows many of these goals in a concept map. Again, it won't go through all of these in too much detail, but they include active transportation enhancements such as sidewalks, side paths, a number of different shared lane markings to make the streets safer for cyclists, public art, enhancements to intersections, key intersections, where major landmarks are located, such as the high school and the shopping areas, and then a number of different future land use changes. And so these next several slides go into those in more detail. There's a lot of information here, and so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'd rather give you more time to ask questions because all of this is available in the report. But the transportation suggestions include really addressing the traffic congestion at the intersection with the interstate. That is a TxDOT owned piece of the roadway, of course, and so closer coordination beyond what can be accomplished within this planning study is going to be required to come up with a more innovative solution. There are examples such as single point urban interchanges and multi-lane roundabouts that have been used successfully in other Texas cities to address congestion without having to acquire property necessarily. Looking at specific intersections for safety and mobility enhancements, we made this really simple graphic to make it really easy for people to communicate to folks like at engineers, at partner agencies about what it takes to make a street safer for crossing and for using as someone walking or biking, which include high visibility crosswalks, pedestrian countdown signals, so you know how much time you have to cross the street, pedestrian refuge islands. There aren't many of those on the western part of the roadway, and reduced lane widths if possible to slow speeds, and especially in those less congested areas where there's a lot more roadway, a lot less traffic means a lot higher speeds that people are taking. The next slide shows some suggestions for locating these various bikeways. The ones highlighted in yellow are new recommendations beyond what's already been recommended in previous plans, such as Plan Corpus Christi and Mobility CC. The next slide. I know that we heard a lot about congestion related to the school. We're actually able to facilitate a meeting between TxDOT and the school administration as part of this study to come up with a campus, basically traffic plan, which is something TxDOT has done for other schools, but had not yet done for Cal Allen High School. And so they were developing a specific plan of action for them to really better manage the high influx of traffic at various parts of the day, mornings and afternoons, of course. Okay, the next slide will show a review of the land use strategies that we're recommending, including adopting amendment to the future land use map to allow more flexibility and new land use, relaxing zoning restrictions to allow businesses to adapt to the new retail environment around COVID, and when funding becomes available, to continue to provide small business programs that target these long-term impacts of COVID-19. So the next slide shows the existing, well, the future land use map that exists today as currently adopted, which has a whole different mix of various uses. We heard a lot of interest in minimizing the intensity of uses on the western side of the corridor and trying to concentrate more active uses on the eastern side of the corridor, and also a lot of interest in making it sure it's a commercial corridor and restricting commercial development on the northern or southern sides of the study area. And so, excuse me. Avery, could you move to the next slide? We're recommending a change of these land uses all along the corridor to mixed use entirely to allow commercial use, but preserving the flexibility for developers to come up with more innovative mixed use treatments along the retail strip. And then on the next several slides explaining changing the surrounding area from either mixed use or low intensity residential to medium intensity residential, as there are currently some low intensity residential areas more commonly associated with more rural parts of the area, rather than with areas more like Cal Allen. you can skip these remaining land use map slides. Just summarize them quickly. Examples of relaxing zoning restrictions for COVID is allowing, for instance, restaurants or other retail environments to use off-street parking for retail spaces, given that it's safer to do so in outdoor environments. Other opportunities are really trying to fund a business improvement or public improvement district that could organize marketing and festivals and events that raise awareness and draw more attention to the area and to the local businesses in the area. These types of funds could also be used to fund grants or low or no interest loans to retailers, retailers and other businesses. In addition to traffic safety enhancements, are recommending a number of other streetscape enhancements to increase the attractiveness of the area for residents and for businesses. The next slides show a few examples of ways that can happen. Making the street easier to cross, number one, to really improve the district as a whole, as a district concept, the ability to walk between different stores, to go from the high school across the street to maybe a business there, to get from the medical center to the retailers across the street. For the current users of the transit system, there's a busy stop located near Walmart. A lot of folks crossing the street there. So they're both safety and economic benefits to, again, making the street safer to cross. Next slide shows various beautification options, including enhancing the planting areas. We've specified in the report various types of landscaping, trees and bushes that are low maintenance, that are already approved in the landscape ordinance, that are appropriate for this environment. Excuse me. Right, expanding and planting medians. We heard a lot of public input regarding, the current challenges of maintaining planted medians, and so made it very clear that any kind of plantings in the medians should be done with wildflowers or other low maintenance but attractive treatments that don't require frequent watering or mowing or maintenance or pruning or anything like that. And finally, I want to provide a few examples of the various types of placemaking, branding, and signage that we offered folks to vote on. We didn't land on a single design, but wanted to get people thinking about different ways that they could bring a more distinct identity to the neighborhood based on local factors, local history and culture. These signage prototypes borrow from the high school mascot and colors, and so it was one idea for trying to distinguish the neighborhood from other parts of the region. And so these include gateways, various types of street signs, wayfinding signage for both vehicles and people walking, as well as street furniture on the next slide, I believe it is. Yeah, various types of banners. And on the next slide, I think we conclude with, more types of wayfinding signage. And then finally, public art. There are a number of different kind of gateway areas, major intersections along the corridor we've identified, various blank walls from existing buildings that could be repurposed as murals, including the interstate underpass. There's plenty of examples around the state and the country of partnerships with arts organizations to highlight the work of local artists as well as beautify an area. And so these are low cost yet effective ways to, again, distinguish the area, draw more attention, and raise a sense of civic pride. So we'll end there with my contact information, but happy to answer any questions you may have. And again, want to thank the planning staff for being such great people to work with and really providing really great guidance and feedback along the way. It was a pleasure working together, and I look forward to working on other projects.
Thank you. Dan, does that conclude the presentation?
Yes, it does.
All righty. At this time, if there are any comments regarding this presentation, I was on the calls, the Zoom meetings and such for this project, and definitely filled out the surveys as well. I live out in the area, and I did get a lot of feedback from the local community out there. But do any other planning commissioners have any comments at this time?
This is Commissioner Schrader. I guess this is probably more directed at Dan, anybody else. Matt had mentioned that the boundary for this was kind of 500 feet either side of Northwest Boulevard. What was the rationale for establishing that as the boundary of study? And the reason I'm asking this is I don't really think there's many of these measures, there's not much they can do to improve the safety and improve pedestrian comfort level on a roadway like this without having a parallel road somewhere that offloads some of that congestion for the local traffic circulation. There's so much development in large tracts to the west of this that people commute. Of course, it's, it'd be interesting to know if the traffic numbers are substantially better now, since a lot of those people, I imagine, are people not commuting these days. But anyway, I'm trying to understand why we didn't study how a parallel roadway, and it almost have to go to the south, would be part of this study, or and how it could be incorporated.
Well, we did. I think we were kind of looking at different, depths off of 624, and I can't tell you exactly how we landed on the 500, but we kind of talked commercial development is typically 3 to 500. Some of the larger projects are a little deeper, but we did want to make sure we had this land use component to kind of, so we could include that and then kind of project or identify any needed changes on our future land use, or how we would maybe handle some of the cross access. But you're correct. I think that did come up in some of the discussions about this kind of alternative, and I think this alternative route really to the south. And I think a lot of the vision, and this is several years ago, where they made some improvements to County Road 52, and then even extended it over to this was a city and county kind of dual participation, and that road is actually not in the city limits, but the city did help participate in bringing 52 over to 1889. So hopefully that has provided some relief to 624, that folks maybe that are traveling in from the west that maybe are heading south on one of those roads to get on 52 and then onto the highway. Maybe that's taken a little burden off of 624, but it was something we had considered, but we didn't necessarily feel was necessary to include in the scope of this project. And then obviously we had some budget constraints on how large we could kind of look and identify the study area as well.
And to speak to that, 52 does take, when that connected to 1889, that did take a lot of the traffic away. There's a lot of, I use that traffic or that path every morning. So that does help. And there is a couple of corridors further down from there as well.
And if I may, Commissioner, I should reiterate, I don't know if I said this earlier, but none of the engineering recommendations made in this report in any way restrict the current capacity of as it exists today. There's no recommendation to remove any travel lanes or to add any new traffic lights. In fact, there are a couple of examples where there's a suggestion of removing a traffic light, considering a roundabout, which actually, in some cases, with a little bit more further engineering review of this to confirm, but can actually improve wait times at traffic signals. And so I just want to make sure that's clear.
That was clear. I didn't presume that, or get the feeling that they were recommending any restriction on that. And in reality, I think that's kind of some of the problem in a roadway like this, is that, and I'm not suggesting in one way or the other, but there were a number of comments that I read where people were saying make this more walkable, feel more comfortable, more usable to pedestrians and bike friendly, all of those things. And with the way that this road is going to work and people are going to demand that the traffic volume has to be maintained. And frankly, the speed's not going to come down. Putting islands and things in there, it makes it more attractive, in ways like that. But it's going to be very hard to make it feel more comfortable from a walkable nature. And so I just felt like there a lot of the feedback and the expectation are kind of counter to one another. And at least that's the feeling I got based on a lot of the comments and a lot of the imagery and expectations from that.
But I think just the one thing, we do have a good bit of right of way there. So I think the goal is to hopefully, be able to work with TxDOT and create, that trail. I know one of the exhibits kind of showed, a system, bike, pedestrian, who knows, even possibly golf carts. I know there's some golf cart use in some of those areas to the north, but creating that system that would be far enough away from the travel lanes where people would feel, comfortable enough to utilize that. So we are lucky and fortunate that we do have a good bit of right of way there to work within.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're east-west. Certainly, I think you have a lot of potential, and I think you did show that well. To me, it's the idea that this is, the area is what it is, but I don't, I thought your slide early on pointing out that the fatal accidents are all on the intersections to the west, and that I would expect has a lot to do with the speed at which people coming in from the rural areas are used to driving out there, and when they get, when they have a traffic light, it's less likely or more likely that they may not see it in time or be slowing down appropriately at time, and that's what's contributing to that, I suspect. So, now people, that's just gonna absolutely have an effect on whether people feel like they can cross those, regardless of the the improvements made. Where I think so. I think that that east-west road that's been improved, that hopefully unloads some traffic, and if there's also commercial development can be, smaller and local commercial development can feed onto that as well. I think that will help.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
Yes, this is Commissioner Salazar Garza. I know that one of the priorities was the safety of all the pedestrians and developing the sidewalks and so forth, whatever, and for those riding bikes. But one of my questions is there anything that TxDOT is considering doing on putting more lighting? I know that they want to do the landscaping a lot in the middle and for the mediums, but as it is right now out there, it is really dark, and there are pedestrians out there walking just on the side of the road, which is really dangerous, and you can't even see them sometimes. But I think that some of this should be addressed for more lighting. I think especially when you're down by close to 1889 and going down to County Road 73, that area seems to be a lot darker. Is there anything that has come up that has suggested more lighting? I guess it's almost like the way it is over here in Annabelle on Leopard, where the mediums sit there as well. There's light poles there. And I'm just wondering if they're going to put the mediums for the landscaping, if they will be also addressing putting more lights up there.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And, we actually didn't, we did receive a ton of public input about safety, but I can't actually recall one about lighting in particular, and we do not include lighting explicitly in here as a recommended streetscape enhancement, but it certainly is, I think, would certainly go a long way in improving nighttime safety. But that's something that can be incorporated. Dan, I think you'd mentioned that DOTD was, I'm sorry, not DOTD, sorry, TxDOT was replacing lights with LED lights. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly if they're moving to that in all the corridors or not, but we can certainly check. But this, I mean, as a result of some of this work that we've been doing on this project, this Northwest Boulevard corridor improvements is on a MPO list currently, but it's on the long range project list. They have a 20 to 25 year project list that they work kind of within the region and prioritize different, how the state should be spending money. And this was a long range project, but they're actually considering to move this project up. And right now I think it was about $18 million that had been kind of earmarked. And certainly any improvement that they would be doing we would certainly be involved with the design. And this project that we're doing here will help them with their design, will feed into it. And they were very engaged with our project or process. And so anything that they would do kind of long term certainly will include improved lighting. That's still kind of a number of years away, but we can certainly look at maybe what options there could be maybe on a shorter term, and include maybe some recommendations like that we could look at. What are some things they could be looking at today in improving the light situation now? But certainly the long-term reconstruction of this project would include, I think, a major overhaul in how they lighted the corridor.
Yes, I really think that's really important. I've been out here for about, over 30 years. And I can remember when 624 or Northwest Boulevard was 624 two-lane. And so we've come a long ways, and it really has improved and grown. But during these years, I have seen things happen, and it just concerns me for the pedestrian, for the people that need to walk to their work. I see some of the people walking that work at Whataburger. They live at the apartment complex, and they're walking down 624, and there is no sidewalks, and there's less lighting. So that's really something that stayed in my mind that I wanted to bring up to see if, when all this is said and done, that they can also consider that, because it is an importance for safety.
Sure, and that was the major emphasis, really, of us doing this project. There was quite a few accidents, and that was, we know the facilities aren't there, and there's bikers, there's walkers on this road using it. It's just there's definitely improvements that need to be made. So we can definitely incorporate your comment into the recommendations.
Well, here's another question.
New York, I got a procedural question on that. If the commissioners have comments like that about lighting that is not currently in the plan, is that something that we need to put into the motion to approve so that council can see that, or is that just something you guys put in the notes, or how does that work? So I assume that's going to council in a week or so, and I'm guessing you won't have time to change the presentation, but can you?
Yeah, I think historically we have handled that, and Buck may want to weigh in, but the planning commission could recommend approval, but with a few options they would like to have included, and we would take that recommendation forward and let the council know that planning commission recommended X, Y, and Z be added to the document, or X, Y, and Z be taken out. It works both ways, and that would move forward to the council with the planning commission's recommendation. Does that sound like how we handled that before, Buck?
That's correct, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Garza, did you have another comment?
Yes, I did. I know that there were some, as I was reading through some of the questions that people were asking. There was something that have to do with the underground storm water. And I know, again, down as you go down further, 624, there on the south side, there just is issues with flooding, you know. I know that they have mentioned things that they were going to start looking into it for the infrastructure that has to do with the drainage. But I just don't know if this is something that is going to be addressed also, because in that same area, it seems to be that same area all the time, they're just, when it rains, I guess it has to do because there's not a lot of, there isn't no drainage system out there. And that has to do really, it gets really close to where the street is, which is where the people are walking as well. There was those irrigation ditches that were out there, but some of them got covered. And when they got covered, they just caused more flooding. So I'm just curious to know if anything like that will be addressed in this corridor as it you know, as it's going to start there on 69 and extend all the way to 73.
So, yes, if you look, if you do have a copy of the report handy, if you see the current draft, I believe it's page 42. There's a strategy there under land use, zoning, and business, under adoption of the future land use map amendment to phase investment into new water, wastewater, and drainage infrastructure, since we did become aware that infrastructure development on that south side is currently inadequate for current development, and that's called for in a time frame of up to up to the next 10 years to phase that in, with a projected or estimated cost of up to $7 million. That's not money that's currently allocated as far as we know, but is a rough estimate of potential costs for the area within the study area. But it's also specified that it should be determined through an engineering assessment, you know, which a full scale assessment.
Thank you. And I know that was a comment I heard from lots of developers in the area. They all reached out about the water, wastewater, and the efforts made here. I mean, if you're going to cover up any of those areas, it's better to put it in now. But that was one of the biggest things. And I know it was taken off the table pretty quick. The very first meeting we had, it was like, this is not an item we could talk about at this time. So those were all removed. Storm, water, sewer, all those were kind of pulled off the table. So I know that is a big push out there. If we want future development, that's going to be needed on the south side of the 624 down there past 1889.
And I just make a comment that there are, staff is realizes the challenges there with different utility with water. Actually, the water on the south side is not within the city's system. It's the district out of Rawls. But we are looking at some things and talking with them in ways that we could, you know, assist in providing better water pressure in that kind of southwest quadrant. We're looking at the wastewater system now with a few different private developers and trying to figure out how we can improve the system and what upgrades need to be made. And then on the stormwater side, certainly there's a lot of challenges there. We know that there's probably a need to continue with a lot of detention right now because Northwest Boulevard is kind of the divide. A lot of that water north goes to the river, Nueces River to the north, and then there's a point there just south of Northwest Boulevard where it goes south towards Robstown and then east across the highway. And so you have different jurisdictions there, even with stormwater, and the system is not big enough, so there is challenges there also. So even the water that heads south, there's probably a need for some detention on property as well as it develops. So there's certainly some challenges, but they are being looked at. It wasn't something that we could get into a detailed analysis as part of this project, but certainly brought a lot of those kind of to a head and is forcing the issue with some other groups to take a closer look at. But obviously the development is happening, it's coming, so it's something we need to kind of get figured out rather quickly. So there's groups looking at that though now.
Good. That's a big one. So so it sounds like the lighting is one that we can add to the motion. Doesn't sound like utilities or drainage is going to be able to be part of it. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, are there any other comments or questions regarding the presentation?
I do have a comment, Chairman. To your point, I've also had several calls from developers that they've really expressed concern about development out there. And I know we're talking about this amazing ideas and the vision that it's outstanding. However, without the proper infrastructure, I think it's going to hinder and stop the growth aspect of it. And I know if memory serves well, it was about a year ago that the staff and city was talking about looking at a very major plan as far as bringing the right infrastructure for drainage and wastewater, and it kind of faded out. And maybe Dan, if you can help me with it or figure out what's going on, because that's a big concern. I mean, there are properties out there that practically cannot be used at all. I mean, in terms of development goes, and we're spending and considering this kind of a major improvement without bringing rooftops. I think it's kind of a counterproductive, and a lot of developers are concerned about that. In fact, they brought it up to my attention as well. So what does it need to be? What does it need to take to look into this a little bit more carefully, give it a time frame? Because it's almost about a year and a half since last time we had a meeting at the staff at the city, and there was some discussions among some of the engineers, and it just kind of faded away. And I really want to make sure we have some better understanding on this about the improvement of the property.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, this is Michael York. I'd like to add to that as well, just quickly. I've actually done a few feasibilities for some developers out there that ended up causing them to walk away from project because of the lack of infrastructure. And I do think it's important to just echo again that if we're going to be, spending time and resources planning for this area, that we really ought to be spending time and effort looking at the infrastructure out there. And I know it was mentioned about engineering study, but a lot of that, it doesn't require a full study to do. It's more of looking at the logistics of how to get it done. With drainage, the draft master plan is there, and there's some master drainage infrastructure, large drainage ditches that go all the way through Robstown and back, I think, to Oso. But none of that's in place. So it is something I think it's important to get in front of and have a plan for it, especially when we're looking at planning for the infrastructure on the roadway. I think that ought to be included as well. Definitely something we should look at, as soon as possible.
I agree with this.
I agree strongly.
There's been several big developers that have walked away from several tracks that I know of simply because they haven't been able to do anything with it. And I really enjoy and hearing this conversation and talking about this amazing vision that we have for 624 in Caroline area. But I just think going counterclockwise, it doesn't help. We've got to figure out the right base first, in my opinion. For years, we struggle with drainage and infrastructure and spending, millions of dollars for this kind of projects and not be able to develop and utilize the properties. To me, it's just counterproductive. I mean, and I want to make sure there's some consideration into bringing it into the motion, please, to discuss this and before it goes off and kind of fade away for another year or 2 years, because it's a real struggle and it's causing a lot of problem and developers are just not happy about
it. And so I'm going to interject real quick. I'm not sure Buck or Dan or anybody. With that said, we can add it via motion to consider it, and then council can review that, or is that even under the purview of this discussion with utilities and drainage?
I'm trying to find a connection. obviously there's some connection that because we're talking about it, but the item before the planning commission tonight is simply the Northwest Corridor Plan itself, the recommendation on the plan that's going to City Council.
Yeah, and I agree. That's why I brought that up. I definitely agree and strongly agree that the utilities and the drainage. I just don't know. I mean, I have to watch how we make the motions here, and if that's even could be considered or not. But
Could we?
I think the lighting makes sense to add as a recommendation to look at with the corridor plan, but the drainage and water and sewer is really needs to be a separate ordeal. You know, it's a larger endeavor than just the corridor. But if there's a way to just make a note that that's something that the commissioners felt need to be looked into, but I think that's a separate thing.
Agreed.
I understand, but I think I just want to bring this up again because what is it going to take to look at it? You know, how long does it going to take? Because we approve this and move forward with it. How are we going to be able to go back to it, or who is responsible for bringing this and put sense of urgency into it? Because there is a sense of urgency into this, in my opinion, at least. And I need staff, we need your help or recommendation on this because it's been sitting there for too long and no action happened on it. So I don't know if there's a possibility that we could table this for some further considerations of, review, because I feel not comfortable personally approving this without the plan for improving developments and infrastructure there. It's just been too long of a problem, and several clients have just walked away, and it just doesn't look good.
Well, what we can do, we do have an item like a recommendation within the plan that certainly investment in the utilities is something that we need to be looking at over the next few years. We could look at that language. I think Matt read what item it was and what page. We could certainly look at that language, and maybe if you want to have some additional things added to that the Planning Commission is strongly recommending that the city move forward in looking at whatever utility master planning is needed to come up with projects that would improve the development or development opportunity. I know that is also something that will be looked at, and I'm sure Al Raymond with Development Services has talked about. We are looking at different projects related to the impact fee studies that also include a look at the various master plans and what projects would kind of develop out of those master plans. So that is something that's actually moving forward through the council now. But I don't know that it hurts to add additional language if you want to make some. I'm sorry?
I'm not sure if they meant to talk, but go ahead. Was there one?
But I mean, it's not, the detailed utility look is not something really we can add to this project, but it's certainly another action that's required. I think Mr. York mentioned that this project, you could make recommendations that we look and do those detailed reports that would be needed. I can tell you that some of that work is happening already, and that some of the work will then be improved and possibly included with whatever work that may be included with the impact fee study, which requires a more detailed look at all of the utility master plans. If that's approved, that's going through the process now. It's not something that's been approved yet, but it's in.
Could we possibly get some more information on that, Dan? Saying that it's been worked on to see where is it at and where's it going?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Al Raymond, Director of Development Services. In the next week or 2 weeks, Development Services will be taking the City Council a proposal to conduct comprehensive master plans for roads, for water, for sewer, and for stormwater. And we're taking also a proposal to conduct an impact fee study for the city for those same infrastructures. So I think that's February 9th, I think. And it should provide, if that contract is approved, 18 months later, we'll be having a discussion, ladies and gentlemen, regarding implementation of impact fees. And the implementation of those impact fees will address this issue of how do we get infrastructure to some place where there is no infrastructure. And ultimately, that's the purpose of that project.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I do think that the comments regarding the utilities and storm does fall under our ability to add it as a motion because it does say Northwest Boulevard's future is, and then there's some comments in there about infrastructure. So I think we could add that. Whether council agrees or accepts that, I don't know the answer to that one. I also think that there are probably a few more comments. I'll let it keep going. I mean, Cameron, I do.
Again.
Say it one more time.
I also add, this committee also reviews the annual capital budget and the capital improvements program, and that normally comes around the summertime. I can't give you the exact date when that comes before the commission. So that's something that the commission also reviews.
Correct. We could definitely make notes about that as well. And Commissioners Arguni, I don't want to put yours out, but I understand your comment. Do you have any other comments, or is that something you'd like to put in the motion here in a little bit?
I'm trying to. I mean, like I said, that is a big concern for me. It's not a one-day thing. It's been going on. I've had actually talked with former city council, Mr. Roy, about this. He's fully aware of it. This is an ongoing issue. Every developer has this concern. I just hope that we can find a solution, Mr. Chair. You know, it's just no action.
And a timely one, yes, sir.
You know, and
Yes, I agree, because this is all a domino effect. Because if we get that set and done, the infrastructure for the stormwater and all of that has to do with it, then it's a domino effect that all these other builders it'll make it easier for them to build. And therefore the area will grow. And that is exactly what the corridor plan, some of the people were suggesting that they wanted more stores out there. They wanted more retail. They wanted more restaurants. And with that being said, well, it'll grow. But the problem is the infrastructure out there on the stormwater, and it just it makes it hard for the builder to go out there and make something when they got all these other challenges they have to complete before they even start their project.
This is Commissioner Schrader. I guess I'll add to this, to what Director Raymond said, in that just to clarify this I've been involved in a great deal of what's gone on since Director Raymond has come on board, and attended several of the meetings where his team and City Manager Zanoni's group has started this process of impact fees. So the way this works, and the reason that this has not happened out there, is that the structure that we currently have for putting in this infrastructure is the developer's purview. When a developer wants to build a subdivision or anything like that, they plan and build that infrastructure and then ask for reimbursement from the current funding mechanism that the city has. It's an antiquated process. So what the director has alluded to, and in my understanding of it, is the impact fee structure is used by many larger urban cities. It's really a much better way to go, and it allows the city to develop this infrastructure ahead of other development. So, Commissioners Arguni, what you've touched on there is that many of these developers that want to develop in this area aren't of a size to be able to pull off these projects under the current structure that we have. And so by this change coming, if the council approves the impact fee structure, it's the change in structure of how we get this infrastructure done. And these areas that are lacking infrastructure to be able to do these developments will be able to occur. But until that's done, that's why many of these areas such as this see intermittent development, or don't happen until a developer of a large enough capacity can get in and do that work.
Thank you for that comment. Are there any other comments at this time?
I'll just make an observation in reading the Q&A, and to echo kind of what Jeremy said, or Chairman Bob, a lot of these questions and concerns have been raised, but it's and based on Dan McGinn's responses during the Q&A and some of the staff's responses to those questions when they were being raised, it's kind of a reminder that this area development plan is not necessarily the tool that's going to address those things. This is just a kind of a vision and a plan moving forward for the development of that area, and then everything kind of falls in behind that. Am I correct there?
That's correct. The emphasis of the project was really, looking at the safety of the corridor, and then certainly, obviously, development is part of that, and is an offshoot is what we want to see in this corridor, increased growth. But certainly, and we recognize the utility situation, so we mention it as a kind of a follow-up that we need to be kind of pursuing additional investment, also in the planning, but also in the capital projects that are needed to open up property. We're aware of the challenges, and that there's certainly a major investment that needs to occur. And I think Mr. Schroeder said it perfectly in how he described the current system versus what an impact fee system could look like. And it would just allow for the city to plan more appropriately and put investment into areas in a proactive and kind of planned manner versus kind of the way we have to deal with the current system where we're reacting to where developers put lift stations and things. I think you kind of seen that in the south side where we've had to, we're now doing Slough Road. We're now doing Broadfield in response to a lot of that development. And the school's kind of in the same boat where they've had to build schools in areas where we didn't necessarily have the right infrastructure in place yet. So this impact fee system will allow us to kind of plan all of the different infrastructure that is needed at the same time to open up an area. So it will just allow us to operate much more efficiently and provide a better experience for the ultimate citizen that will live in a particular area. So
thank you.
And this is Michael York. One other thing to add on Commissioner Schrader's comment about the antiquated system. The current system doesn't even have a funding mechanism for stormwater, so that's obviously a big problem. What I wanted to add is if what I'd like to see, I guess, is for us to recommend approval of this is just me personally, but in some way, if we can emphasize that we, as commissioners, want to see or stress to council that we think it's important that they look into the utilities, and some way to let them know that's where we stand as they're getting ready to be presented with these master planning and impact fee studies, just so that they understand that we see that as an item of importance.
Thank you. At this time, are there any other comments regarding the presentation? Seeing none, I will entertain or actually I have to open public hearing at this time. Are there any comments regarding the comprehensive plan? Mr. Demas?
No, sir. No public comments were submitted.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion as presented with comments or for more discussion.
All right, this Michael York. I'll take a stab at this. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the corridor plan with a recommendation to look into lighting along the corridor, and also with a recommendation that council consider looking into master planning and impact fees or what any other mechanisms for developing the utility and drainage infrastructure in the area.
Salazar Garza, I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item 8 under Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you, sir. Any items to be scheduled? Seeing none, I will adjourn the Planning Commission meeting and convene the Airport Zoning Commission meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Ball,
Here.
Vice Chairman Dibble is absent. Commissioner Schrader,
Present?
Commissioner Zarguni,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Here?
Commissioner York,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Vandell,
Here.
and Commissioner Salazar Garza.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on, there was no absences, so moving on to the approval of minutes. Are there any comments, or do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This Commissioner Miller, I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Al Raymond, Director of Development Services. I have nothing to report at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any items to be scheduled? Seeing none, I adjourn the AZC meeting.
I'm
Hope you all
sorry,
have a great-
Jeremy, I had a
Yes.
quick question. Do we have any update on when we're going to be presented the new AQs?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Miller. This is Aaron Demas. We did reach out for Lieutenant Pollock to attend the meeting, and we didn't hear back from him other than we thought he was going to attend. But as such, we didn't see him appear tonight on the roster. The last that we were informed from Lieutenant Pollock, they were still in the draft phase, but the consultant for the Navy had not completed their study. Now, they will have to go through a pretty significant public outreach effort, which what Mr. Pollock assured me is that as soon as they hit that mark, it would be distributed to us, which in turn we would distribute to the not only the Planning Commission, but of course your other hat as the AZC. So at this stage, we have not received an official update other than we're on standby. But I'm very politely and as sensitive as possible trying to prod Mr. Pollock as much as I can to at least give us some form of a map or update so we're not completely caught off guard.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
You bet.
Thank you for the update and the comments. At this time, we are adjourned. Thank you all.